Hello and good morning, everyone. Only Positivity here. No coffee today. I've been getting up early, so I've been getting my cups of coffee in very early in the morning. So it's about 12:30 right now, and I'm not trying to, be up all night. So I try to get all my coffee in before noon. But anyway, that's long-winded. But only positivity here. Like I said, no coffee today. Ready to kick off podcast number 62 on this playlist that I'm looking to launch called Elevated Thoughts. Now, before diving into the book and everything like that for today, let's go and start with the level set. So, as I endeavor upon pursuing knowledge and life experience in this next phase of life through fitness, photography, cannabis, traveling, fitness, I said that already, but many more things. One habit that I've really formed is reading. So this podcast essentially goes through some of the books I've been reading as of late, taking those lessons learned and applying them to experiences in my life. Now, before we dive into the story for today, I do have with me a LaCroix, a lime-flavored sparkling bitch, if you will. So let's go ahead and crack her open. Alrighty. So today's story is, it's not super purposeful or intentional or anything like that. For those of that listen to my podcast, for those of you that listen often, you probably know that I mention walking a lot. Walking's a great habit of mine that I've formed as well. It gets you out, it gets the blood flowing, but it also is not intense to the point where you can't reflect, right? So when I walk a lot, I tend to reflect and reason through things, and it's very, very therapeutic for me in many ways. So I live in an apartment complex that's connected to a nice neighborhood out here. Now, there's this loop that we make through a neighborhood. It's essentially a huge cul-de-sac, right? Comprised of a whole entire neighborhood. And from where, I start walking to the time I get back through this neighborhood loop, it's 1 mile, right? 1.1 miles. So that helps me metric myself when I go for a run, or I have to at least get 4 rounds in to get my 10,000 steps for the day, right? Pardon my voice cracking. So everyone is very friendly generally in this neighborhood. And as, summer approaches, one thing I really like to do is say hi to everyone when I walk by them, right? I don't really go out of my way to say hi to them, but, I'll wave and things like that. And as we walk, you come to know the same faces, right? And then there's this one douche boy who, he lives with his parents. I'm not going to knock people who do that or anything like that, right? Not, this is not my point here. But when we walk by, he's always mean mugging, right? He's always staring and without breaking eye contact. He's probably an early 30s, brown kid. And, it just kind of pisses me off, right? The way he just folds his arm. He's chain smoking all day long and just staring at us, right? Not breaking eye contact. I'm like, fuck you, dude. So in any case, we walk by, generally ignore it, no worries. There was one time he was riding around in this super beat up car and he was driving recklessly in the neighborhood. And I think he was doing it to kind of show off, but there was no one else out. But I'm like, dude, this is a neighborhood where kids play. And this is some reckless ass behavior that you're displaying, man. I don't like that. So, he hasn't done anything outright to me. So, I'm not going to look for a problem or cause problems or anything like that. The other day I come home I'm at home and my fiance went for a walk and she comes over to me and she's like, dude, this motherfucker was extra eyeballing me today. And I'm just not feeling that, right? Sometimes I feel when she goes alone, I feel a little bit like he's trying to intimidate her, or in any case, I don't especially in Indian culture, you see it, and because I grew up that way, it's the men intimidate the women, right? And I don't like that at all. It irks me. It rubs me the wrong way. So she came home and told me that, and I immediately put on my jacket, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna walk by this motherfucker's house, I'm just gonna, we always do when we make our rounds, and, I'm just, if he's mean mugging, dude, I'm gonna just I'm gonna address it. I'm like, dude, what is your problem, right? And I'm not trying to start a fight or nothing like that. I'm just trying to understand why he's doing that. And also my fiance is not one to over exaggerate. So if you're making her feel intimidated, I'm not going to stand for that. Right. So in any case, I walk over there and this motherfucker is obviously probably thinking like what I do for work, right? Because I go for a lot of walks throughout the day. But I'm also wondering, is like, is your 9 to 5 like standing on your driveway and chain smoking, dude? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are the benefits with that job? Um, is there a 401k? Like, what is your company match? I'm getting fucking nerdy, but anyway. So I walk up there, right? And I'm walking and I'm looking at him from a distance, and he backs up into his garage and like closes the door. And like, so that, I don't know, like that to me seems like he was kind of fucking, he knew that he had kind of stepped out of his bounds and like did some bullshit. But like, I haven't really seen him out since, and I walk throughout the day, and like I kind of just want to sit down with him and like have a therapeutic session, be like, hey, what's the deal? What's your problem, man? Let's like talk it out. I want to help you. I'm sure I can learn from you and things like that. But I'm like, dude, you cannot be going around like doing that, especially to women who are going to be intimidated by that, right? I don't like that at all. So anyway, fuck that guy. I mean, I hope he might be a good dude, but like, fuck his behavior big time, big douche boy. So in any case, I'm gonna hop off that. That's just kind of a tangent. So we'll come back to the book for today, right? So today we're gonna be going through part 4 of Roberto Bolano's I want to say graphic or illustrative novel titled 2666. Now, I highly encourage anyone read this book. It will take you some time, so be prepared for that. But it'll definitely assist you in enhancing your vocabulary and the way you speak. And you'll do a lot of Googling of the definitions of different words if you don't know them already. But it's a great exercise. The story is great. It's very illustrative in the way it's described. And it was a very euphoric experience for me to read this book, right? So essentially what I've been doing is I've been as I read, I highlight quotes that I like, right, that are descriptive, that I think are take a lot of talent to put together, and then I'm gonna read them out, and then I'm gonna kind of go through it. I'm gonna open it up, I'm gonna peel the layers back and see how it applies to me, and just let you guys know how it hit me, right? So let's just go ahead and jump right into the first quote. So part 4 of the book is called The Part About the Crimes. And we'll jump into our first quote. But the little old lady who had come out of the confessional just stood there, staring at the stranger, although sometimes she shifted her weight from one foot to the other, doing a kind of dance step. But the little old lady who had come out of the confessional just stood there, staring at the stranger, although sometimes she shifted her weight from one foot to the other, doing a kind of dance step. Now, this is very, very important, I think, in the build-up of this particular scene. Now, this little dance step that this lady is doing, right? So first, you set the scene that it's in a church, right? It's in a confessional booth. She comes out, and there's a stranger in front of her, and she's kind of nervous about it, right? Now, why was she nervous, right? Why was she doing this little jig? This little dance. Is it that innocent type of nervous where like you're just kind of afraid to public speak, or is there something else going on? Is there something maniacal going on? Now, one thing I'll say, when I was in grad school and even undergrad, right, you start to engage in these public speaking type of courses, but you also have to go through interviews and public speak a little bit more in classes and things of that sort, right? Now, what you realize is that a lot of people, and myself included, have a fear or some kind of issue related to public speaking. Some are more natural than others, right? And some of the things that you are taught when you take any type of public speaking class, or when you're getting feedback on a presentation, a lot of time you'll realize that people have certain idiosyncrasies and you have to be aware of them, right? So when I was very young, like in the 5th grade, I remember I gave this speech on Mahatma Gandhi, and I dressed up like him. I was supposed to speak from his perspective. And the whole time I was doing this rock. I was rocking back and forth. And that takes attention away from what you're actually trying to say, right? But there's other scenarios. There's other scenarios where a hand gesture, like for example Barack Obama, he does that like thing where he pinches his pointer finger and his thumb a lot, right? And he has his elbow like flexed inwards, and he's using his hand as a way to engage his audience, right? And now that's an idiosyncrasy specific to Barack Obama, but that's might be an example of a good idiosyncrasy, right? If you will. When I was in grad school, I would give a lot of presentations too, different case studies and things like that. And that was where I was taking the opportunity to enhance my public speaking, like stand still, right? I would keep my body open. I would, peruse, or I would gaze at the audience, but I would make sure I'm making connections with everybody there, right? I'm looking at the people. My body language is up and erect. I'm not hunched over. I'm not shuffling. I'm not fidgeting with my hands too much. I'm not playing with my hair or anything like that. So, I'm not saying that I have it down or anything like that, but it's really interesting that, Bolano mentions this dance step that this old lady is doing, right? Showing a sign of nervousness or maybe lack of confidence. So we'll hop off that quote, and we'll jump into our next quote. The priest was young and seemed tired, but not because of what had happened that night, but because of something that had been wearing him down for years. The priest was young and seemed tired, not because of what had happened that night, but because of something that had been weighing him down for years. Now, it's important that that's mentioned, right? Because there was some sort of event that happened that could piss anybody off, but this priest wasn't mad about that specifically, right? He was more weighted down by something that had been getting him in the trenches for years, right? So it's a different type of upset, a more deep-rooted upset, right? And I've seen this look before, right? Someone who is, yes, stretching the moment, but it's not because of that current stimulus, right? This is a reaction that is deeper, is underlying, because life has been hard, right? They've been experiencing negative outcomes for quite some time, and here's another one that just piled on top. I'm like, all right, go ahead, I guess I'll go fuck myself, not, throw that on there. And I think we'd see this a lot with, personally, like immigrants, right? The older generation of like our parents that came from India or wherever, right? They had a hard life, right? They came here with nothing. They came here had to build a foundation, right? And for example, let's say something like grocery store, right? Let's say a cashier is giving them shit. That they might be upset about that in the moment, but something like that could cause them to have a huge, like a sigh of like, damn, here's another piece of bullshit that's being thrown onto my lap, right? When life's getting you down, it's hard not to let it show, right? I once had a boss who was very abrasive, right? She was cunning, she was evil. She would yell at everyone, including myself, constantly, right? And this really wore me down, right? The constant like scrutiny, the constant negative abrasion coming from this boss. A person can only take so much like verbal abuse, right? And you would see it manifest in me probably in other ways, right? I might have an overall like darker picture on life. I might be more cynical, and I'm sure, my friends and family would notice that, right? Like, oh man, like this dude again is like down in the dumps, like being a drag, and these types of stimulus, like they compound, right? They don't just, it's not moment to moment. It's not event to event. It definitely takes a toll on one's personality if you don't triage it properly. So another powerful quote, we'll hop off that one and go to the next one. The cook was there, sitting in the yard smoking a cigarette. She made a gesture as if to ask how it had gone. The janitor responded with another gesture, impossible to decipher, and went out to wait for the principal at the main door. The cook was there, sitting in the yard, smoking a cigarette. She made a gesture as if to ask how it had gone. The janitor responded with another gesture, impossible to decipher, and went out to wait for the principal at the main door. Now here's a scene where you can see that there's multiple people involved, right? There's a cook, there's a janitor, and there's like a third party who's kind of witnessing all of it. But there's no words, right? No one's saying anything. And there's often scenarios where words don't need to be said, right? A person's expression can say it all. Now, like, there's a time where like, my buddy might have called me over maybe just to play some ball, right? And kick it like we always do, right? The usual. But, as soon as I walk in the door, I knew something was off in this particular scenario. I could tell by the atmosphere, by the expression on his face, that there was a bigger issue at hand, right? And he was having some issues with his significant other, but we didn't need to say words. We didn't even talk about it in that moment. I just stood there. I know he needed my company, and we didn't need to really chat it out. We just needed to have fun like we always do, right? So it's interesting that whether you know someone or not, right? When you know someone, I would say it's a little easier, but whether you know someone or not, you can tell just by their body language, by their expressions, by the way they express, whether their mood is light or dark or somewhere in between. So hopping off that quote, jump to our next one. He didn't like to be alone. He was always requesting the presence of policemen or reporters. He didn't like to be alone, and he was always requesting the presence of policemen or reporters. Now, I know I don't give a lot of context in these quotes, but if we talk about, a prisoner or like a serial killer, this kind of reminds me of Ted Bundy, right? If you watch any of the Netflix documentaries on him, the one with, Zac Efron, or any of the other ones that were done on Ted Bundy, you realize that the guy was a narcissist, deep to his core, right? He liked attention. He liked the fact that he was kind of a dapper, like sociable, personable guy, and he could use that to trick women into doing what he wanted, right? And the fact that he was getting all this press was kind of positively reinforcing what he was doing to begin with, right? And a lot of serial killers are like this, right? They want the attention, and they like when the spotlight is on them. And it may be because they never received attention from a parent or a significant other, growing up, or they were traumatized by lack of attention, And, if we step off the whole serial killer thing, right, there's a deeper theme of people in general who don't like to be alone, right? And I'm not saying it's good or bad, right? I see it often. There's people who are afraid to sit with their thoughts, right? So what they do is they turn the volume up on their lives, right? They're always at happy hours, overindulging, eating too much, or hanging out with friends at a moment's notice, right? Now, let me use an example. And I don't know if it's a good example. So I knew a lady who got lap band surgery, right? It was like a tummy tuck or something like that, right? And what she would always say to me is that, it's so hard to lose weight. It's so hard to lose weight. And I was like, it is. It is hard to lose weight, right? It's not easy, but it's a lifestyle thing. But what I would see also is that, on Snapchat or Instagram, she's smashing on drinks and bad food almost every night, right? Margaritas, chips, salsa, queso, burgers, beer every night, right? And my thought is here with that is, you can you can blame things on the world, right? Oh, it's happening to me, right? Or you can take charge, did she ever take a second to stop and understand why she wasn't hitting her goals, right? And my thought is no, because you're afraid to be alone and be out of that quote unquote social circle for a second, right? And I'm not, dude, trust me, I'm not fat shaming, anything like that. It's not about that, because her goal was to get skinnier, right? Or to lose weight. And you're wondering, or you're down in the dumps and you're playing the victim card because you're not being disciplined, right? And a little bit of alone time, a little bit of self-reflection might have opened up her world to say, hey, look, it's me, dude. I'm the problem here. I just need to make better choices. And I maybe need to surround myself with people who are on the same wavelength as me about wanting to lose weight, and they can kickstart me, keep me accountable to my good habits and stuff like that. But, I'm no motivational speaker, just, a few little things here, right? Being alone with your thoughts and things like that is good, even though it can be scary at first, or even the concept of it can be scary. So we jump off that quote, how to our next one. It's better if policemen live alone, but you do what you like. It's better if policemen live alone, but you do what you like. Now, this reminds me of a few TV shows, right? Like Mindhunter. I don't know if anyone's seen the Mindhunter, but the main character in that show, even the partners in that show, they both cannot keep a relationship, right? Their relationships are failing because they are at the will of their job. True Detective, one of the best shows ever, right? Matthew McConaughey, Woody Harrelson. I feel like I'm saying his name wrong, but anyway, Woody Harrelson. They both could not keep relationships. They end up, Matthew McConaughey sleeps with Woody Harrelson's wife. Ruined it for you right there, my dudes. But, it's just they can't keep solid relationships intimately, Narcos, right? The detectives in that show, they had issues, or they damaged their relationships, or they don't have time to be with them. And essentially what the theme here is like, these policemen, these private investigators, they settle with detached sexual interactions from time to time, right? And that's like the closest thing to maybe love or affection or passion that they might get in this scenario. So we hop off that quote, we jump to our next one. La vaca stood motionless, waiting, like someone who walks down a random street and hears her favorite song, the saddest song in the world, coming from a window. La vaca stood motionless, waiting like someone who walks down a random street and hears her favorite song, the saddest song in the world, coming from a window. Now, this quote was happy to me when I first read it, right? Until the author states that it's a sad song she hears. Standing motionless, right? The music has stopped her in her tracks, walking down a quiet street, and all of a sudden you hear this song that, maybe you used to listen to with your ex, or that got you through a tough time, right? The song is going to bring you back that euphoria and, pensivity or, reflection at the same time, right? So let me try to use a clear example. So The Weeknd for me, right? I leaned on his albums, like Trilogy and Kissland, even like Beauty Behind the Madness for many, many years. And I still kind of do, to get me through things, right? I felt like I had no one to talk to. I felt like I had no one who understood me. And I felt like The Weeknd understood me. I felt like he got what problems I was going through. And even though they weren't apples to apples, his lyrics helped me through things, and now when a song comes on, I'm not in that phase of life anymore. I feel happier. I feel clearer of mind, but I still will listen to it, and it stops me in my tracks, right? It brings me back to that time where I was going through some stuff, where I wasn't in my right mind, I guess. And I reflect on the good and the bad, right? And I don't ignore the bad. I acknowledge it and say, hey, look, I'm moving forward. I'm better than my previous self. I'm running my race. And even a song that you might have, come to love with your ex, right? And you hear it and it kind of brings you back to that point. There's some melancholy associated with it, but if you are indeed over that relationship, it won't bring you true sadness, right? It'll just help you reflect on how far you've come since that time. So we'll hop off that quote and jump into our next one. The little house, despite what a person might expect, was always clean, but its cleanliness, its neatness, lacked any feminine touch. It was a stoic cleanliness, utterly graceless, like the cleanliness of a prison or a monastery cell, a cleanliness that tended towards sparseness, not abundance. The little house, despite what a person might expect, was always clean, but its cleanliness, its neatness, lacked any feminine touch. It was a stoic cleanliness, utterly graceless, like the cleanliness of a prison or a monastery cell, a cleanliness that tended towards sparseness, not abundance. Now, I'm not going to go forward and say that, when I lived by myself, my place was cleanly, because my fiance will probably bust out laughing any minute if I say that shit. I have a buddy that I hang out with very frequently who is very cleanly, right? But he's a bro. He lives with a couple other dudes, and he's very clean. When I go over there, everything's clean, but it's clean in a manly way, right? There's no feminine touch to it, right? It's just very stoic, minimalist, not too much around. He does keep everything intact. The floors are always shiny. When I go, the wood floors have been recently cleaned. No dishes in the sink. His bed is made, right? Things of that sort. There's no nasty odor in the air. No food laying around, right? But it doesn't have a feminine touch. Now, when I think about my place now, ever since I moved in with my fiance, there is a feminine touch, right? There's little pieces everywhere. Everything means something, right? There's portraits of me and my fiance when I proposed to her on the walls. There's nice magnets on the fridge. There's very specific types of candles. There's like a TV remote holder tray. There's so many different little items, and at first you think they don't go together, but when you really look at the room, it makes it come together, and it turns from a house to a home. And I think that is where that feminine touch comes to play. Another thing I'm thinking about right now is I guess in what Crazy Stupid Love, that movie with Ryan Gosling and Steve Carell. When Steve Carell's daughter goes to Ryan Gosling's house, dude, he's got a nice ass house, right? Don't get me wrong, the guy's clearly doing well for himself, but it seems clean. But you could tell that's a man's house, right? And that's a great job by the directors, because there lacked this like feminine touch. The colors were too the colors were too gray. There wasn't enough. There's something about it that just like lacked like a feminine touch there. And I'm not describing it well, but I think we can all understand what that really means. So we hop off that quote and we jump into our next quote here. So just a couple more. Every 100 feet, the world changes. Every 100 feet, the world changes. Now this quote hits very differently, and I think it's 100% spot on that the world changes every 100 feet, maybe every 10 feet, to be honest. Now, what I'm thinking about is like I'm sitting in my apartment right now working on this podcast, recording it here. But across the hall, there's a group of younger people that just moved in, right? And there's some funny characters, really cool people, and they got that young energy. But they have their own trials and tribulations. They have their own issues. They're having their fun, and they have their own perspective on the world, right? And they're probably 20 feet away from me right now as we speak. Let alone someone who is 100 feet away from me, or a mile, or in another state, right? Even that douche boy I was talking about this at the beginning of this podcast, right? He lives probably 0.1 miles away from me, but he's got his own world, right? And I think that's so interesting, right? And I think it connects us. It makes my problems, I wouldn't say less significant, but it's sombering, right? And it makes me not take myself too seriously, right? Everyone's experiencing issues in the world. Who am I, right? To say my issues are the most important or take precedence, right? So another interesting quote there, and as you can tell, I really love this book, and it's a really good read. So we hop off that quote and we go into our last two quotes. Facing boredom head on was an act of bravery, and he had done it and she had done it too, and both had seen terrible things in the face of boredom, things that she would rather not recall. Facing boredom head on was an act of bravery, and he had done it and she had done it too, and both had seen terrible things in the face of boredom, things that she would rather not recall. Now, I think COVID is coming to light here, right? Is the first thing that's coming to mind. Now, so many people changed, or maybe they didn't, or adapted during COVID, and we all had to, right? What did some people do? We saw alcohol sales go up, right? We saw Google searches of I just heard this yesterday of how to like hit your wife and it not show. Googled like 20 million times in 2020. A lot of people started, picked up marijuana, right? And that's a good and a bad thing, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm a proponent of cannabis, but it can be damaging if used in wrong ways or in too much excess, right? Or in excess. But one thing I realized during COVID was, hey, right before COVID, I was like, dude, I gotta address boredom head on, right? I could watch TV all day long. I could just sit in front of it and numb myself out. And I watch TV, right? Don't get me wrong. But what am I going to do that's like beneficial? What's going to take me to the next step in mind and body, right? So I picked up reading heavily. I picked up podcasting. I picked up fitness even more so, right? I pick up traveling a lot, So these types of things are me addressing boredom in some way head on, right? I'm not going to be a victim to boredom. I'm going to address it. I'm going to take charge of it. And I'm going to make my life fun and exciting. And I'm going to do great things, right? So, on the dark side of boredom, like I said, people get into weird things, right? When they're bored, I knew a dude many years ago who masturbated like 10 times a day, dude. And he had to tell his girlfriend to like keep him in check, right? Like when he got the urge, his girlfriend would be like, no, stop, don't do that, don't do that. I know this isn't fully attributed to boredom. It might be an actual problem. And it requires some actual help, institutional help. But it's interesting, right? And sometimes when I get too bored, I start to find issues in my life that need fixing, right? Oh, I need a new job. I need this new item. I need to do this. I need to do that, right? And is it because I really need to do that thing? Or is it because I'm bored, right? I used to work with a lady who didn't know how to handle her boredom, right? So like, let's say you're at work, right? Those of you that work a corporate job, when you have free time, I'm personally not super quick to be like, okay, what's the next thing, right? What's the next thing? Like if I work hard at work, if I have some downtime, I obviously have things ahead of me. I'm gonna try to be proactive, but when it's busy, it's really fucking busy. And when it's not, I'm gonna take those moments to recharge and appreciate the fact that it's not busy, right? But what this coworker would do is she would just barge into people's office and want to have conversations, and just kind of be loud around the office, right? And people begin to notice that. They're like, wait, why do you have so much time to shit around, And, people would tell her, even me at a certain point, be like, go back to your desk, dude, work, don't come bother me. And she got fired, and pretty much because she let her boredom get the better of her, in my opinion, right? I could be being inconsiderate, but, that's just how I feel about it. And then, we jump off of that quote, go into our final quote. The shoemaker's son always goes barefoot. The shoemaker's son always goes barefoot. Now, this is not a quote specific to Roberto Bolano. It's more of a standard quote that's out there, but I'd never heard it before, and it was very interesting to me. And essentially what I feel like this means is that, the family and loved ones of someone who is knowledgeable or skillful are often the last to receive any benefits from that skill, right? Now, if we think about why that is, right? Is it because this person is so busy putting their skills to use for income or stature or for whatever reason that they forget to utilize it towards their own family? Maybe, right? Is there this resentment that a person has with their career so that when they come home, all they want to do is just forget about their job and want to forget it, right? They just want to talk about other things outside of their profession. And it's interesting the way it's put, right? The shoemaker's son always goes barefoot. And I'm trying to think of a practical example of that. Maybe I don't personally know, I can't think of any, but let's think about physicians and maybe them being unable to pass down some of their knowledge to their children. So for example, health literacy, right? So let's say, I know health literacy is a big issue, especially in the immigrant population of Indians, where you see a lot of physicians, right? So for me, it's very paradoxical to have an obese physician, right? Because what you're promoting is health, but you are not living that, right? You're not understanding where nutrients come into play and the value of eating well, getting your fruits and vegetables, and living a moderate lifestyle, right? Now, if you don't know it, you're not going to pass it down to your kids, right? Your kids are going to grow up eating, whatever, McDonald's, things of that sort, because they don't know the value of eating properly, right? And they're just going to think that, hey, I'm going to transition into obese life, right? And I'm not fat shaming, right? But these are the types of things that happen, when you don't share your skill set with a younger generation, right? And that example is specific to medicine. It could happen to anyone. It could happen to me, right? I feel like I'm learning to communicate really well. I understand the value of emotional intelligence and things of that sort. And I would definitely give that to a child if I were able to, but maybe not. Maybe the things that, I've associated with work, I don't want to pass down, because, they've been difficult for me, or I've had bad situations at work and things of that sort. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling, but some interesting quotes that Roberto Bolano is putting out here. And like I said, I would suggest anyone give this book a read. I think we only have maybe 1 to 2 parts left of this Bolano book. But other than that, I really hope you guys are enjoying these podcasts. Feel free to leave me any feedback. And remember, only positivity. Thanks, guys.